Okay, we are almost done with our recap. Let's finish off a few small things. First of all, I said before there are compiler errors and compiler warnings. The only thing which will really always matter are the compiler errors. You cannot possibly make your program when there is a compiler error, which means that you made a serious mistake in your code that you typed, and according to C++ rules it cannot possibly make sense and it cannot possibly work. But then there are smaller problems which aren't really serious problems to according to the basic rules of C++. However, they are still worth looking over and trying to correct. So your compiler will be able to compile and run your program if you have warnings, because warnings aren't really stopping your compiler from compiling everything. But errors are for sure something which you will not be able to continue without fixing them. Next up, I just wanted to clarify what's going on when during my previous videos. I should have said this before. When I type up examples and stuff, and suddenly somewhere along the way I start typing up a whole bunch of letters and different stuff right in the middle of the code, I want to make clear that you cannot possibly compile your program with a whole bunch of jumble typed in the middle of nowhere like that. When I type up such things smack in the middle of the code, it is just there to explain things and to illustrate some stuff, but as you notice I always delete it afterwards before trying to compile and running my program. Again, the compiler is very careful about every single letter that you type into your code, and if there's anything which seems weird or doesn't belong there, you will get for sure some sort of error. Or for example, a different video which I typed in something like integer x, and then on the next line when I was explaining about expressions, I typed up this line over here. And of course you may wonder, wait a second, we never made the variable r or t or y, so what in the world is going on over there? What is t, what is r, what is y? And that is correct, because we never made these variables, and if you try to compile this program it will not run. Again, it was just me trying to illustrate some stuff and explain something, so I temporarily typed up a whole bunch of stuff inside the source code, but it was just for explanation, and I deleted it afterwards before trying to compile. So this is just to clear up when I type up random stuff in the middle of the code. Alright, let's try to wrap up the recap. We learned that there are different types of commands you can type in C++. Some of them are called statements, some of them are called expressions. Expressions are actually statements too. And we learned that most stuff in C++ has to finish off with a semicolon. When your command is over, when the command is done, finish it off with a semicolon. Like for example, if you have an if statement, you will also need to finish it off with a semicolon at the end. However, as we will see in the next video about functions, if you will be using a if statement which is going to be using braces at the beginning and end, like I explained in the other video, so you will not need to terminate the end of your if statement with a semicolon like that. You can just leave it with the plain old closing brace, and that'll be just as good. And then of course you can have as many statements and expressions as you'd like inside of this if statement. We also learned how white space doesn't really make a difference, except for when of course white space will separate between one code word and a different thing. Like for example, if I don't put a space between int and x, the compiler won't know that I'm trying to make an integer variable here, so make sure you space that out. However, you can stick the x and the semicolon together, you can stick the CIN and the extraction operator together, and a whole bunch of stuff you can keep together. As a matter of fact, most of your program you can have all together in one single line, and it won't be a problem. However, for clarity and to make things a little clearer, basically what belongs to where and what's trying to do what when, it is a lot better to space things out correctly, have one command per line, and if you're using an if statement or something that's enclosed inside of braces, many programmers like to indent that by another tab, and Then we went into variables, the different types of variables you can have. The unsigned short, unsigned long, signed short, signed long, float, double, char, and boolean. The variable limitations and what happens to them if you put in a number that's too big or too small for it. We spoke about expressions, which is any little piece of code which ends up expressing a value. A number expresses a value, whatever that number's value is. A mathematical operator expresses a value. It'll express whatever is the result of the mathematical calculation. A variable will express the value that's inside of it. Creating a variable is not an expression because it doesn't finish off by expressing the variable, it just creates it. It's a statement, not an expression. As well as the assignment operator, which, like for example, if you're putting something into a variable, this in and of itself will not return anything, it will not express any sort of value. All that this does is take whatever is to the right and put it inside whatever is to the left. However, conveniently, f, which is to the left over here, is an expression, for is an expression, so you can take advantage of that and use the for expression with something else, or you can use the f expression with something else, etc., etc. Anything that is expressing a value, that expression is up and available for grabs for any operator or variable, whoever is around, that is ready to grab that expression. So for example, this multiplication operator grabs the expression from this and from this. The assignment operator grabs the expression from this. This assignment operator grabs the f expression, etc., etc., because these pieces of code, just like that, express, they give out, they yield some sort of value. Then we learned about the difference of a r value and a l value. A r value is not a variable, it is just some sort of value in and of itself. For is actually just an expression, it is just a number. You cannot possibly put something else inside of for, because for is for and that's it. But on the other hand, variables such as x and f and stuff like that are L values. They can be to the left side of the assignment operator, which means they can take into themselves something which the assignment operator will take from the right and put to the left. And of course, as we see right over here, a L value, something which can be to the left, can also be to the right. As we see, f is a L value and it is on the right side of this assignment operator. So that's why it is valid just like that. We learned about mathematical operators. Then we learned about the useful plus plus and minus minus operators, which will just take a number variable and minus it by 1 or plus it by 1. Difference between a prefix and a postfix, which will make a difference if does this happen first and then the expression, or does the expression happen first and then the operation. We saw comparison operators to test if something is more or less, etc. So it is an operator which takes two stuff, something to the right and something to the left, be it an R value, an L value, whatever it is, and when it's done, it yields, it expresses a Boolean value, which means either truth or false, depending on whether the operation was successful or not. Then we saw about the if statement, and this is very important. A bug which you should never make, but you probably one day will, is that when you do equals twice, that is the correct comparison operator which will test if this is equal to that. However, do not use the equals symbol just once, which will not compare if the two expressions are equal, but it will rather just do the assignment operator, and it'll try to assign 6 to this variable, which is totally not what you intended. You wanted to compare if they are both equal or not. So don't get confused between the assignment operator and the equals operator. Then we saw how you could mix together a couple of conditions to test by using the AND, logical AND operator, the logical OR operator, and the NOT operator is also helpful to do the exact opposite of whatever is being evaluated. And that's basically pretty much a recap.